acknowledge the presence of a great set of folks on the Strategic Planning Committee, a mixture of folks from different services, different levels of seniority, some who are active duty, some who are retired or veterans. It's a great set of folks that have been absolutely invaluable in terms of helping pull this together. We've got operational planners, people with extensive operational planning background that have really been the engine behind pulling the slides and the concept together. Like somebody said at one of our previous sessions, these slides represent the distillation of a lot of discussion, time, and effort. And it wouldn't have happened without the members of the SBC. There's also an advisory group, Admiral Pond, Captain Jackson, Captain Norgard, and this guy, some Abernathy guy, I don't know, he couldn't get him to stay out of it. And so what you have is you have a great mix of command at multiple levels, people with great corporate experience, and also folks who have great nonprofit experience, and they're an invaluable wisdom to keep us on track and keep us moving forward. So this is the intellectual engine behind the work that you're going to see and the work that needs to be done. So Admiral Pringle touched on it a little bit, and I'm going to touch on some of the bullets on this slide. Once the Strategic Planning Committee was stood up, then the question is, okay, let's get a sense of what the Admiral's tasking was, right? What does the NNOA president want us to do? And this is the entering argument. As we learned, and as I mentioned before this morning, it's going to evolve as we learn more and more. And so there's a couple of key points here that I want to just emphasize. Time is tight. We've got to move quickly, and the summit is an example of pivoting from symposium to summit, an example of moving quickly. We have to leverage the foundation because financial autonomy is the key to our future. This operational environment is challenging. There was some discussion about why are we here? That's really not the best use of our time. To recognize that we are here and then determine what we're going to do about it. And at the end, the mission that we began 50 years ago, the mission that we have now still continues. We support, enhance, and drive readiness. So the President's strategic priorities, you can see them again repeated. And again, the idea behind this is we're taking all the leadership's guidance and all of leadership's perspective and making sure that we integrate it into what happens next. And so the planning priorities, there's got to be alignment. This approach has to be adaptive because things are always going to change. The veteran outreach piece is something that we need to do additional work on. And then we also need to determine what impact are we going to really make? What impact does NNOA need to make? And how do we make sure that that impact is acknowledged and registered? And so the partnerships with industry, nonprofits, academia, other like-minded organizations are absolutely critical because there are people out there who share our values and who we can align with. And then when you look at the outputs, we'll touch on that. Just make sure we have a manageable product, make sure that something that makes sense, that the springboard, the strategic context really provides a proper foundation for the LOEs. And we picked up a couple of items on here in particular, and Admiral Pringle mentioned it earlier this morning, the STEM work that Admiral Johnson is doing is absolutely critical as we move forward and bring forward and identify STEM talent, which is of great value for the sea services, but also for corporate America. So this slide, I talked about the JP5, Joint Pub 5 construct underpinning what we did. These are just the major elements for Joint Pub 5. I'm not going to spend much time on that. We talked about the methodology, the strategic context first, and then the operational approach second. So I want to spend a bit of time discussing the language in the vision and mission statement. Hopefully we've had a little bit of time to think about it. Is there anything that we have missed, or is there anything that we are off target on in terms of how we articulate this? And keep in mind, this is something that while it may change, because as we learn and grow, the idea is that this language will shape us and help guide us as a North Star for the next 5+ years. So are there any comments or questions or observations about the mission and vision statement? Hopefully everybody can see it that low.
Just in terms of tech support, can you have them raise the slide and try to focus?
All right, yeah.
Even from here. Yeah, it's not like...
Oh, so the ones on the edge? Okay. Kwan, can you hear me? If you're on, can you have Marcus come into the Virginia room? We need to adjust the display.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody go the outer edges. Yeah. All right. Who's got the mic?
Tony, grab the mic.
And Tony, just for everybody who doesn't know you, just identify yourself.
Okay, Tony Hahn, retired Coast Guard captain and vice president of the Houston chapter, life member. I just, when I looked at the vision statement, mission statement, it's refreshing to get your angry felt in corporate America. It's not the same, so I miss that. But the point is, I think I read over that several times. I think you really captured it. I was thinking, just knowing the current challenges and how to put that into the vision statement.
Is this on?
Yes.
Just since we're having a little sidebar as we get
Can you identify yourself?
Yeah.
Captain Marcus Cannon, U.S. Coast Guard. So, side note as we're fixing the IT. Great stuff moving forward. I think the conversation of, hey, we need to figure out the new norm and how we're going to track forward, not spend too much time talking about the negative stuff. 100%, I think that's the right thing to do. I'm going to say something, not sure if these conversations have already been had. So if they are, please excuse me. But I do think that part of the discussion needs to be, how is this organization showing value to the sea services at large? I, for one, don't need to be explained how important this organization is. I think a lot of our junior folks need to. But also, I think that if we're able to show value, which we know that there is, to a number of people that don't look like most of us in this room, that might end up protecting the organization in the future if this fight ever comes back around. So, the discussion might need to be had about, hey, how are we being leaders and mentors to JOs, mid-level, O's, senior level, folks that don't look like us, to show the value of this organization so that they can be a part of it as well. Once again, don't know if those conversations have already been had. I'm just asking for the side.
Marcus, thanks for the question. That's a valid concern. And I will tell you that just yesterday I had an opportunity to go eyeball to eyeball with the current acting Chief of Naval Operations, and got the head nod. He knows. I also had an opportunity to see the former Chief of Naval Operations. She knows. Anybody that's wearing the uniform knows the value of our organization. The problem is they're in a position where they can't do anything differently than they've already done. We can. We have the latitude and the autonomy to do things differently, which is why we're here and we're talking about the foundation and we're talking about how NNOA moves forward. The other thing that I mentioned earlier today is we're looking at how do we actually communicate to the younger generation. Word of mouth works wonders. The old school waterfront meetings, that not so much. So we're trying to get to where they are on the platforms where they are, and make sure that and I don't see Christina Denai in here, but this is mostly a veterans meeting. But the San Diego chapter is doing that right, and she's leading by example. They're doing events. They're doing community outreach. They're going into high schools. They're doing it right. So I think that's our best tool to make sure that they're actually getting out there and doing things and making sure that everyone understands the value that we bring. Because those who are still standing in uniform, they're doing the best they can with the situation they have. And the fear in the workplace is real. But we don't have that to worry about as far as we're concerned. And one of the things that Tom mentioned earlier is we have partnered with other organizations just in case the legal battle comes our way. Don't expect that to happen, but we are partnering with NAACP and their legal defense fund just in case that comes our way. Everybody knows we value, everybody knows we level up, but I don't know if that matters right now.
But Ron, is that better?
That's better. Go to the next slide, because that was the one I was having problems with.
Yeah.
That
so,
was-
Okay, that's better.
Yeah. I don't want to dominate this, and I know we want to move on, right? And please understand, I'm not saying that these things aren't happening, right? I think that there was a gap. Senior level, I don't think anybody at a senior level does not understand this now, right? But I'm talking about more at the 04, 05 level. And I'm also talking about more at the 04, 03 white male level.
Right.
That is where I think that we might have a conversation to say, how are we showing value this organization to that member for them? Because we can make them members in introducing them to what this organization is.
Yep.
I know for me, I know personally that I know there's along the way in my life, I failed at bringing along some of my friends that didn't look like me to make sure that they were also like me at the end of the way, right? I start realizing that later on, right? And so, once again, I don't want to dominate the conversation, and I'm not saying that we're doing something wrong. I'm just saying, are we talking about?
So I think what Marcus is talking about is what Admiral Bowman discovered, right? So for those of you who didn't meet the Chief of Naval Operations, former chairman, he became a life member of NNOA as a member.
Yep.
And he has added value to this organization. But to me, what's more important is he added leadership. One of the conversations he had with me when I was a one-star is, Michelle, these organizations and the Navy's ability to survive if we cross federal lines. And he was encouraging me to become a part of the ANSO, the Hispanic organization. So I became a life member of ANSO, helped stood up the DC chapter. I was the vice president, Lieutenant Commander Crespo was the president. We have to cross-fertilize what you're talking about. Bringing in people who may have similar experiences but don't necessarily look like us. And then through that, that's how they understand the value of the organization. So you are following down the trail of a great leader, but you're right. But I also think this team's right. For that group, the 0304s, it's not necessarily going to be in person on the waterfront. I think we're going to have to figure out how to get to them through social media platforms.
Thank you, ma'am. And one thing I will say is that last year, Marcus, last year we did a joint ONSO conference. Highly successful in Norfolk, Virginia. First time we did that since about 2010 timeframe. My guidance to the ONSO president then was that we needed to connect at the chapter level. And some of the chapters have been able to do that, not all have. That guidance is still open. I personally sent an email invitation to ONSO, SSLA, Jules, some of our other partner and like-minded organizations, ROCS, AFCOMA, for them to be here and attend this summit as well. So I agree with you. We need to make sure we're casting a wide net and we're as inclusive as possible. But with that, we still also need to figure out how do we meet people where they are on the platforms.
And I think, Marcus, one of the things that was very deliberate about the language in the mission and vision was that we wanted to make sure that every officer in the Sea Services, no matter what their demographic, no matter what their specifics are, could see themselves there. And if that's the case, then the outreach to everyone, which is what we're about, can happen because everybody can say, yes, I'm in that group. And as we get the value proposition, to your point, more cemented, more recognition, more confirmation of the value that that NNOA brings, then we'll be able to bring that, have that mission or accomplish that mission. Because at the end of the day, we're surrounded by an environment where all talent isn't being necessarily moved forward with the same level of energy. We will be different. We are different. We will move all talent forward.
You got one question from Sean. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Lanier. I'm retired. I'm kind of the executive director who was also I'm kind of piggyback off what Marcus was saying. Interesting how I got started was from African to the Ross conference, and the question came about the person who basically paraphrase what he was saying. They have the old white dude that wants to retire, so that was in 2010. We were having the same discussion, but part of my getting other people involved. Our strategy has been to get more focusing on events, midshipmen, have them come to this way to the long conferences, data meetings. That's why you see about those events later, because their social media, they can rank and they talk to their commanders over the level over commanders. They've seen them, they're more likely to be involved in social media and they can see the value of what information through their eyes. So it's not necessarily you as a retiree or since it's a flag coming down, it's more organically growing up. So I have to say that you may want to consider that as well. Not just from the top down, the bottom up, side to side, back, front, and the head, and all of that. Is because even I'm a Virginia military agency. I don't worry about the guys on the board. I don't worry about the superintendent. We're going to have this fights in the General Assembly. I am interested in the cadets that we've had that graduate. This 100 plus cadets that we've had come through there, 70% graduation rate in the last 10 years, where they're going to be at 17 years from now. That was seats already planned. So I think that that's part of the consideration that we made. Like Wayne Preston State says, they escape the work of that, not worry.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I will say that in March timeframe, I spoke to our Annapolis chapter, and there were several, actually there were maybe about 20 or 30 of our midshipmen. Saturday meeting off campus because they were just kicked off campus, so to speak. But to a person, fear in the workplace. They just heard Tuesday before from our own Secretary of Defense, and to a person, none of them felt included in this conference. My goal to them was to make sure they understood and know they were still there for them because we are, but also help them understand how to navigate that environment once they become or even through the remainder of the time as a ship. But that's part of the maturity and the professional development that we offer, helping them to understand how to do it. That's not going to change anything.
So I know that this is only words, but words mean stuff to me as well. So when I see the vision and the mission statement focused only on high caliber talent, that tells me some people are being left behind. So if you're already of high caliber and you've already got the, you've got the Kool-Aid and you're heading down the road, I don't see any focus in neither one of these statements on those that need the help that don't quite get there yet. And so that's my only comment. It may not be worth anything, but I think that we're leaving people behind when our focus is only on the high caliber talent and not on all talent. Everybody out there deserves to be mentored and brought along and reach down and grab some others. That's my only comment about both of those statements.
Tony, when we were debating that, the thing we were trying to be with that was more inclusive because we're just, I mean, yeah, almost just the opposite. You know, the left behind bring a talent. You know, we are just asking for opportunities. And so we're saying high caliber because we know that the left behind brings high caliber and high talent. And so we don't want, and looking at the environment and what we see in the anti-DEI, we want to make sure what we're talking, we're bringing high talent. We're not asking you to give us anything. We're not asking you to lower your standards. We want to bring high talent to the battle. And so that's why we were purposeful in using that term. And so I hear you and I understand that, but that's why we're saying what we're saying. If somebody sees that in the New York Times, we are bringing in high talent. That talent has a range for somebody like me from Georgia and the Georgia public school system. If you put my profile up, I don't have a chance on being successful in the name, right? But given an opportunity, you know the result.
And Tony, we will make.
Add to that also, just by virtue of an officer getting commission, we're not adding a list to the equation. We're talking about officers. So just to either qualify to be a P3 pilot for Bernard and Tom and I and Aaron Howard to be surface warriors, or Rob to be a Marine Corps, second lieutenant all the way up to colonel, you're a high caliber. Period. How far you can take that caliber? That's what we're here for. We're here to enable that and actually get you as high as you can go. But every single person that can compete for a commission, by definition, is high caliber. So I think it's just a matter of perspective.
And I think the other piece is that, when we begin our journey, folks who are mentoring, maybe they don't start out as high caliber, but our mentoring enables that to happen. As an example, when there was an issue with SAT scores for getting in the Navy, for getting in the Army, there were some great dedicated folks from the DC chapter who actually paid for SAT at Suitland High School. And so just, a small example of, either finding the high caliber talent that's already there or making it such that it's high caliber. Yes, ma'am.
But I see Tony's point also.
Mm.
And I fully understand the environment we're in. And so sometimes I think maybe we are not necessarily overthinking, but maybe trying too hard to not have negative force. Be a force to take us out, so to speak. So maybe something like enables qualified officers to thrive in the service and in life, and that way, even if it's someone who is not considered, and high caliber can be relative to what have what that really means. I think we all understand that. What I think it means. Maybe something like that uses the word qualified. I know that can be subjective as well, but I see his point for what that's worth.
I think the points of view are both correct and understandable at the same time, because on the one hand, like you make a great point, the language is there to kind of defend ourselves against the anti-DEI bias, but then on the other hand, we're not trying to exclude folks, because there's a lot of folks who who don't necessarily get the start that they need, but once they get the start that they need, then they actually become qualified, so, or become high caliber. So no, I think this is a good discussion. We'll figure out how we make that adjustment. But at the end of the day, like I was saying before, us, we want to be clear that we're moving all talent forward. So, Admiral Brown, now that you're able to see it, do you have any comments?
No, I'm following. Yeah, I'm following the discussion. I can see both sides of the high caliber debate. I think the mission statement really is the development of people to become that high caliber officer. And so there may be a way to wordsmith this to sort of find a middle ground. But I don't have a system in that regard.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Well, thank you for those very insightful comments, and we'll move on. So, talked about this before. We're changing the challenges that are going to become opportunities for us. We want to continue the mission, like we're just tying back to the previous discussion. Now let's dig into the LOEs. So the lines of effort that you see here, the 5 I enumerated already, the ones that we need to focus on first are empowering the chapters and increasing influence and partnership. And there's a slide that's much more legible is coming. So just want to talk about the overview here. So we're going to drill into LOE 1 and 2, but just to touch base again, LOE 3, which is enterprise functions, the absolute key to this is the IT and digital transformation. So in a past life, 15 years at Accenture, that was I led teams that undertook digital transformation with commercial platforms at large agencies, intel agencies, defense agencies. And if you don't get the IT right, all the other stuff that you do get right, you don't get the yield that you need. And so we're not going to drill into the enterprise functions today, but these are in order to become a high performing nonprofit organization, there has to be improvement and change in LOE 3. As I mentioned before, Quan Hurst and others are all poised to do that, and so that's going to be happening in the future. LOE 4, the strategy and planning. We have a strategic planning committee now. The marketing communications piece. What is the story that's going to be told at the end of this summit? That's going to be absolutely critical. It has to be crisp, it has to be clear, it has to be compelling, it has to be enduring, and set up what happens next. That's absolutely got to be right. Succession planning. So I've been the president of the DC chapter for the majority of this millennium. I don't think in terms of years or even centuries. So there's probably going to be a time where if I can't remember my name, I probably can't remember my position. So there needs to be a plan for that. Admiral Pringle talked about it as well. For him, he's term limited. I'm going to get that put in the bylaws or as a note to myself. I am not. But this has to be systematic. If we're going to groom people with the right talent and experience, having folks in a systematic way work their way up through chapter leadership or in adjacent roles that give them the perspective and experience they need, that's absolutely critical. And so we have to be deliberate about that. And then finally, in the summit planning, we pivoted quickly, and Mary McAdams and a whole bunch of folks, and Quan and Ernie, and obviously Admiral Pringle were all involved in making that happen. And so can a quick pivot be done? Absolutely. Why do we say that? Because it actually happened. So now the question is, what happens at the next summit? But more importantly, what happens as the work is being done between the summits? We need to have interim checkpoints, and each summit, as we solidify and establish how the summits are going to work, the summit there should be an agenda item on the summit that covers the state of NNOA in terms of what we said we were going to do at the beginning of the year and what we actually got done and what adjustments need to be made. We have to have that level of rigor in terms of how we move forward. And then LOE 5 with the foundation, Tony will cover that. But and he mentioned it, right? Getting the investment right so that we are applying our corpus to the association's priorities are absolutely critical. There has to be systematic fundraising, and we've gotten some great ideas about that. And then why is that so important? Because it's the fiscal autonomy is the key to our independence in the now and the next.
One question before we
Sir.
on the target state as
Mike, yes.
on the target state statement, pre-eminent officer recruitment, development, and retention enabler that enhances the sea service readiness.
Mhm.
That's a little bit narrow. Is there any value in, because we're looking forward as well, any value in including additional enhancements other than just readiness? We keep hearing about mobility, lethality, etc. Is there any value in going beyond just readiness? That's my question.
That's an interesting. What's interesting about that question is that readiness is included with a number of other terms in the current operational. And so we've had some discussion about this. Do we add that or not? I think your point's well taken, because the value proposition that this organization brings to the table has to be in the language of the operational environment in terms of what they value. So I think that's a great observation. Does anybody have any piggyback thoughts on that? Go ahead, Sean.
For input for this, do you want to do that offline or if you go taking notes?
Well, there should be somebody that's recording this, but I would say make your comments verbally. But if they're extensive, they need to come to me. Yeah.
Yeah, just some thoughts on some things. So succession planning, some of these things outside the box, good ideas. There's a nonprofit course over at Georgetown University. I think it's about $5,000, but you don't have a certain amount of money that they work it out with you. Probably want to get.
Can you talk to the mic? Yeah.
Probably want to get some program.
Okay.
As a nonprofit at Georgetown University.
Okay.
More importantly, because of the network that's involved, you've been tied into the DC community, so you make some friends outside of the circles and the defense contractors. A couple other things. There's another course like that at Notre Dame as well. You can do that online. They can do that online. For Legal Defense Fund, probably look at an organization called EMILDEF. It's a minority business enterprise legal defense and education fund. But becoming a member there, then entitles you to a lot of the lawyers. It's tied to Fortune 500 companies. From there, contact their Don Flowers, so I can give you that contact. And then we can talk. I'm not up to speed on how many chapters that you have, but I would, for the consideration of the group, they want to take a look at. You have some active duty members in your chapters, but you also have some retirees and folks that are not in uniform. But my point is, they should be your agents to talk to. Every city has some type of community foundation. Chamber of Commerce, they have businesses, minority businesses, a lot of veteran-owned businesses, but that would be a pool they can tap into. So that development strategy for the chapters, or playbook that can help them how to engage in that community. Because, like, for example, Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce here, which is the largest Chamber of Commerce, they run the Delcon Awards, and there's probably about $7 trillion worth of contracts in that room with 300 people. It's over here, taxes from every year. And rarely is there military members that's talking to the banks that are there that's funding those organizations and projects. There are some members there that tend to be West Pointers, a lot of them. A few maybe Academy folks in there, but I think that you'll find that 90% of life is shown up, and they find some folks that's very interested in the story as well, and your stature and the presence that you have in this room.
Thanks, Sean. I think one of the things that we're looking at as we increase our influence and partnerships, there's a complementary effort there where we're also increasing our and intensifying our engagement with veterans. As Mark and I were talking in the break about that. For those of you who don't know her, Erica Dobbs won a Small Business of the Year award in 2024. She's a member of the DC chapter. And the conversation that Mark, and by the way, she also donated $5,000 in scholarships to the chapter. And the conversation and Marcus and I were having, well, what kind of additional handshake? She helped NNOA, but maybe there's something that NNOA can do to help her with this network of wisdom we have. So just the idea of extending our influence, extending our engagement, leveraging the folks that we have is all part of LOE2, which is increasing influence and partnerships. I'm watching the time here because just make sure that Tony has enough time to talk. So let's talk a little bit about LOE1 and LOE2, because I flew over LOE 3, 4, 5. This is 1 and 2, and these are the ones that are truly chapter centric. And what you have is the chapter focus areas and priorities, and I'll talk about where those came from in a minute. In column 2, LOE1, you have all of the empowered chapter activities. And then in column 3, LOE2, you have all the influence and partnership engagements we were talking about. I'm not going to really drill too much into that as much as I am in LOE1 and empowered chapters piece, because the increasing influence and partnerships, that still needs to happen, but it's kind of a different focus area. It's not a primary focus area, primary line of effort like LOE1. So the leftmost column, where did that come from? Did a review of the ops manual, did a review of chapter competition, did a review of the current priorities, and what you see on the left is that listing of those priorities. What we're in the process of doing is taking those priorities and translating them into programs that the chapters execute under the auspices of the national board. And so the programs you see here are fundamentally the first two listed in the president's priority order. So the membership program, which we'll talk about in a second, and the recruiting program are absolutely critical to moving forward as a first priority. The others are critical as well. We just talked about veterans outreach. Professional development and career development, there's been some discussion, well, what's really the difference there? And those may end up merging. The professional development piece, as articulated in the ops manual, is really about having professional speakers and educators come in and speak to the chapter, whereas the career development program is really what you see, the aspects of it going on in the workshops around you. STEM, when you think about the STEM program and the importance of STEM, when we're identifying talent, all talent is valuable, but STEM talent is actually something that's even more sought after than general talent, not only by the C services, also but by industry. And so we've got to have a STEM program that's interconnected and it works. The scholarship program, we talked about enabling people to move forward earlier. And so when you're bringing funding to bear for people that would not otherwise have it, that's a key part to getting them on this step for their education. When you talk about long-lasting impact in the community, we have for the DC Scholarship Program, we actually have families who have come through. And another indication of time for me to go was when a retired captain said, "Yeah, I got an NNOA scholarship." I'm like, okay, you know, it's that's the beginning of the end. So let's talk about this in a little bit of an eye chart. And I can't make it bigger.
Can't read.
I mean, all the aviators should be able to know it. We have aviators, we have seasoned aviators. I'll do that. So this chart really isn't intended for this audience to digest word by word. The takeaway from this chart is this is a start point in how we articulate what these programs are about. Okay, so that needs to be the SBC in collaboration with chapter leaders will flesh this in, because one of the questions that comes to mind as we canvass all the chapters, all right, are all these programs important? How important are they to you? Because these chapters are different. And then is there something that's not on this list that is important to a chapter that we should be accounting for? Because once we get that established, what are the activity areas that chapters need to be engaged in? Then we start the standardization. Then we start the recognizing, okay, there's some chapters that are just going to be further up the maturity curve in their programs than others, and there may be some chapters that haven't even started, but they're doing what's most important. And so, given the importance of membership, in addition to being the president's priority, clearly membership is number one for what the chapter situation is. But then the question is, what is the rest of it? And then we start asking the question, well, all right, so all of the chapters have membership programs. How do we make sure that we harvest the best practices? How do we make sure that rather than having each chapter have to invent its own wheel, how can we do better so that you're adopting playbooks for these programs? And so that means we have to break down the chapter program taxonomy. Okay, who are the program owners? The programs are going to be owned by the board of directors, but the executive agents are going to be the appropriately designated volunteer chapters. Then we standardize what the programs are about. We lay out the objectives, and the objectives need to be smart, they need to be measurable, they need to be attainable, and they need to be tracked. We set the right set of metrics that matter, and then there's going to be some programs that are in good shape. There's going to be other programs that require a set of transformation activities. We'll identify what those are. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what we'll have is a set of books for chapters to run their programs. And if that means that we need to make changes to the ops manual, so be it. We will do that. Sir.
Yes, sir. The recruiting part is the part that kind of bothers me. Okay. The recruiting issue is one that bothers me a little bit, because in today's current environment, folks are basically being penalized for being associated with vendors. So when we looked at the strategy, was the strategy developed before we got into this environment, or has the strategy focused on what we do with the environment that we're in right now? Because I'm trying to figure out, how do we encourage folks to come into the organization, or start participating in the organization, and we could actually penalize their careers.
So I think Marcus wants to answer the question, and I'll come back to you, Jerome. Good.
So Marcus Kennedy's still active duty. And so as an active duty member, I don't see affiliation with this organization being a detriment. It's really, we have to be clear on guidelines of now what you can do in uniform, which is nothing, and what you can't. So I don't see this as a detriment to active duty members being involved in the organization. We got to be clear to make sure that folks aren't outside of the policy, right? So unless you have a specific example, okay, cool. Let's explain that, please.
All right, yeah. I raised that question because the thing is, it's a reality. I'm long affiliated with the DC chapter, and the thing is that I've actually had folks that I wanted to schedule to speak to the chapter on professional development basis, and they reached out
Is that, you know?
So, hold on.
No, I think that's what you're
No,
saying.
those are good. That's a good reference point. Understand that's somebody's opinion. Where is a specific example that someone has been following the current policy and then they have gotten in trouble on the job? Where is that happening? Because that's what we need to address. People just saying, "Hey, I'm concerned." There's a lot of people that's
So to answer your question, we don't have specific cases, but our point of view is we're taking, you know, a risk-averse posture, which is that even if there's a perception of an issue or the possibility of an issue, we tell active duty members, dial back as far as you need to and a little bit more.
And I think that's the right thing. I'm not arguing against that. What I'm saying is that we need to be clear to active duty members, especially people that were trying to still get involved,
Right.
is to say, this is what you need to be mindful of.
Mm-hmm.
This is the policy. You need to be following it. And this is how you can be involved, realize the benefit, and still be okay.
And we put out that communication. It's directly from the national president. He has put that word on the street.
So February 9th, I sent out a president's message specifically giving about 15 or so steps for active duty members to protect their career. They protect their careers. And also, just like Tom mentioned, gave them an opportunity. If you are currently sitting in a position as a chapter president or in some other office, you can adjust your schedule as much as you're comfortable with. There are people like yourself that are still doing what you're doing, and there are other members that are on the national board that are still participating, but they're also doing it in accordance with the guidance with the current policy. My guidance to them is do not get cross-threaded with current policy. We're all intelligent enough to know exactly what's being said. We're also intelligent enough to read nuances from actual attacks. So we just wanted to make sure that we're protecting the folks. Now, if someone makes a personal choice, then that's on them. That's their personal choice. We don't judge them, but we're going to keep moving. So that answers your question?
No, I didn't have a question, and I wasn't saying that this stuff is. I'm just saying when someone says this could be a detriment to their career,
It could be.
how you do it.
Yeah.
Me being here today is not a detriment to my career.
Right.
If I showed up in uniform,
Right.
it's a detriment to my career.
Exactly.
So we just need
would be violating policy.
so we need to be clear when we communicate that this is a detriment.
Yeah.
Being involved in this organization is an enhancement even today.
I agree.
But it's how you do it. We gotta be clear.
I agree. And in addition to sending out the message in February, we held town hall meetings across all the regions in March to have open discussions about what people were concerned about. So we're still improving on how we get the word out, but it's a labor of love. You know, figuring out how to make sure we get the word out and reach as many people as possible.
You make the first.
You'll go right
Give you permission to defer to me. Okay, so some of us have experience, Lillian and I, in operating in this environment from a gender perspective. And I will tell you that when women started in the Navy, what we could and could not do was defined by law. But I will also tell you that permeated through the system, right? Unwritten. What's that? Unwritten. It's the unwritten. That what you do or cannot do can hurt your career. And you are absolutely right. The argument that I was strictly within the law might not be sufficient. And we just have to recognize that, so that when people make I think, intelligent choice, we respect that choice, and we have to be firm in letting them know we respect your choice, but we will be here for you on the first. We're still going to keep going. Emma Howard still loves you. So when you're ready to come back home, Howard University, I'm still here to school. But I want to be clear. So just a couple examples from that time frame. Women, the Navy limited the number of women who could go into the surface warfare community to 15 a year, when we were bringing in thousands of men, and that was deliberately done. When we got to a point when we had sufficient numbers that we needed mentoring, two of the most senior women who had 4 years of service started a newsletter called Women Driver. And it was great. We each voluntarily sent these women $2, and then we would send in stories, and they would sit around a kitchen table on a Saturday night, put the stories in this newsletter, and send it out back out to the women. How did I survive my tours in Asia? How did, the stuff we could not get from our male leaders. And I will tell you, there were times that it's not, they were afraid. I cannot tell you the number of times I was on a ship and somebody said, I don't want to be near you or with you because I'll be accused of fraternization, right? I literally was in a command school class where the admiral stood up and said, I will not, shipboard driver, I will not allow a women officer to be in my cabin with the door shut, but he'll do it with a guy. So when we tried to take care of ourselves, when Big Navy found out about this newsletter, we were shut down. This is not an official. So, okay. So what did we start doing? We started, without permission, holding our own symposiums. As a lieutenant commander, I was a lieutenant, and a friend was a lieutenant commander at the ROTC, we'd served on our first ship together. We held a women's sea service symposium in San Francisco. And we had 300 women show up. We had the base, God bless Texas A&M, they sent almost all their women midshipmen. We had a tugboat woman who clearly had a non-traditional role, one of the first women to command the Coast Guard ship. And then, of course, I was a speaker as a lieutenant because there just weren't a lot of us, right? And we videotaped the whole thing and put it out. We didn't ask permission, we just did it. And afterwards, when it was a success, the ROTC commander said, it was my idea, the Navy said, fine. So we have to understand the operating environment we're in. We have to support those who make intelligence decisions, but we will be there on the far side. That's what we really have to communicate.
Rebel. Sam guy here. Perception is reality. Two things I want to point out. Perception and reputation. Okay. What is the perception of NNOA within the sea services as well as the active duty? Is it a minority organization? And what is our reputation? And our reputation from the past. Now we're talking about making a sea change, if you will. How do you let the rest of the world know about this sea change? Marketing. Marketing. So if we're going to do what we're doing now, and we're changing course somewhat, we have to now educate the rest of the sea services to where we are and where we're moving to. Don't hide behind the rock, but however, educate to what value added that we bring to the sea services in the version that we are doing now, not what we did in the past. Because if you talk to individuals now, what I'm hearing is that, that's a minority organization. Back off. So how do you change that reputation?
So, and that's where the importance of, I can't answer your question about how, the specifics of how yet, but that's where marketing and communications, and there's a reason that marketing is first.
Absolutely.
Okay? So we have to market ourselves.
That's what I'm saying.
From my perspective, the difference is Captain Marcus Kennedy reads the policy and understands it differently than Lieutenant J.G. Barnes, who's on his first tour in an operational unit. I read the same policy you read, but as a young buck afraid of his own shadow on that new boat or on that new squadron, not be willing to come to an event like this potentially. That to me is the only difference in the two.
That's a true reality.
Yeah.
Not denying that. But that's where Captain Kennedy has a conversation with Lieutenant J.G. Barnes offline. Maybe at the house, maybe when I invite him over to a barbecue, right? And we say, hey, wherever you are, I'm gonna meet you where you are. But this has value. If you're concerned, that's fine. As Admiral Howard said, we're gonna be here. But that's where Captain Kennedy has to go find Lieutenant J.G. Barnes. How you doing? How your family doing? And in a way, it's he. Okay, what's the disagreement?
I know it's not descriptive, but again, that's where the R size, the prompts, whatever that you have those conversations while they're pets. That's what they're pitching. That's why you have to come to the conferences. So you introduce them, you give them on social media. That's when some of their calls, you know, the guys down in Quantico and say, yeah, this lieutenant coming from BMI, right? This kid come from Hampton, he's going to be at OCS this summer. And you know, to kind of navigate people. Because General Johnny Wilson did that for me when I was getting at BMI. I had to be much of a Pentagon before I came before I went to high school. So we're not doing anything with the bill. All saying the same thing, but just understand it's a supply chain. Look at all the different points in that chain where you have context and you have those conversations and solve issues before we
So
one thing that I've had that I'm trying to make sure that you guys are clear on what I'm saying. We need to keep doing everything that we're doing, that we've been doing. I think there's a conversation that do we need to extend that and go actually talk to that white male JG as well and help them become a better leader. Help them truly understand and think that they have something of value. I think sometimes we think that the only time that we explain to white males that they can be an ally, so they can just help us in our mission. No, we're a leadership organization. We're a mentoring organization. They don't just serve, they're not just an ally, they actually can personally benefit. And if you have a white male that understands that as well as a Lieutenant JG, when they become an 05 or 06, they will still feel that connection and will be in this room even under this current environment. So we're talking about partnerships, yes, and so SSLA, all these other groups, those are good partnerships. But we also need to be intentional about making sure that we show value of this organization to white males as well.
That's another way to change your reputation.
right. So one more. Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
Well, Marcus and I were kind of talking about the same topic at this discussion. I think we had a lot of momentum. We saw what's happening. This political changes. This whole conversation started about the recruiting question. And do you mind bringing that slide up? The question I had, which I think was a good, was what does that look like? Because when I look at NNOA being directly involved in recruiting, because the point is we're trying to recruit overseas services. How's the chat do we interface in this current environment where we've been firewalled? How does, you know what I mean? How are we recruiting agents for DoD and Coast Guard?
So, and this kind of ties back to Jerome's question, right? So, even though there may be a firewall in place, doesn't mean that we don't continue to understand how recruiting works. So we continue to be engaged, and there's a term that's kind of bubbling up that's kind of replaced affinity groups, something called shared interest groups, which I find is an interesting play on words. But in in the context of recruiting, what we do is we learn enough about how recruiting is and how it's evolving to be able to identify the shared interest overlap such that it is all about the value proposition and the value that we bring to bear, and some of the unjustifiably perceived issues about DEI go away because we're focused on talent.
We shut those down too.
Yeah,
This one here, we had 6.
put a little clarity on his comment, because I think he got a little confused when I was saying. Right. What I was talking about is recruiting officers that are already in the Navy.
Okay.
Yeah, but the recruiting into the Navy is a little different.
Yeah.
That's what the whole.
Yeah. And Jerome, it does predate this
Right,
operating
and that-
environment. Yeah.
question
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
you know, how do we encourage, if we want to grow in and away, we got to be able to convince people that are in the Navy now to join in and away.
Right. Marcus
The thing is that when you have an environment that's anti-affinity,
Mm.
it's kind of hard to have people join. All right. So the thing is that whether we want to believe it or not, there's people out there in the Navy right now, in the Marine Corps, that don't like affinity groups and don't like us. And that's reality. It's been a reality since we've been in this. Right. So the thing is that so we are looking at this environment. You know, we have to be able to understand that we're in a hostile, friendly, hostile. And how do we then protect the people? If we want them to come in, we want them to feel protected. We've already done some things that have a point for them to kind of protect our members that are in our organization right now. All right? And I'll give you one. We basically scrubbed all our members that had DOD email addresses. Because we don't want somebody to see them get a DOD, get a message from us with a DOD email and then use that against the person. So we've already asked the people to give us their personal email addresses so that we can go out and communicate with them without having to run through somebody else's screening process. Okay? But that's part of what we're dealing with in this environment. So when I was raising the recruitment question, my point was, are we looking at it from the way we previously did things, which up until 6 months ago may have been no. 6 months ago, that whole dynamic changed. So what we have to do now is, until we get a better environment, we have to be doing things in a way that encourages people to join us, but at the same time, thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you, Marcus. So before I turn it over to Tony for his discussion, we talked about the checkmark items. We've got 2 minutes left. Checkmark items, and then what we have highlighted in yellow is what we're going to be doing in terms of creating the initial roadmap, and then really get the transformation launch and implementation phase going. And what that's comprised of is having those drumbeat interactions with the chapters to really get the programs that need to be standardized and moving to get those underway. All right, thank you very much.
Hey, John, let me go over the action items. I was kind of recording
Bernard Jackson. First action item, how do we show value to the 04 and 03 with an emphasis on white male population? And white, okay, good point. Thank you, Bill. No, I'm serious. That's good.
No, you know, it's what the new members, our leaders are praying in this organization, that we look at those goals. They're not just, they're all opposed. I think that was the purpose.
Okay.
Right? So it's the entire demographics of
Okay, we will, okay. And then discussion on the phrase high caliber, how do we run the right way to that? Is readiness too narrow? Should we include other, this kind of like building? And then we need to determine a guide rule for active duty members, what they can and cannot do as a member in a way, and we must be clear. then we have to meet members where they are. How do we connect with the 03 and 04? And then and then the last one I got, should or do we recruit active duty members? That's what I had for action items. Is there any other action items that we had out there in discussion we need to capture? Okay, thank you.
Great job, Tom. Give Tom a round of applause there for leading that discussion. Again, I'm Tony Swain coming back. This is a really, at this point, as we're talking, not the NNOA, but the foundation. From this morning, all of you in here this morning. Now, we have a sponsor in here. Bailey's what? Bailey, right? Raise your hand back there. This is sponsoring this event for us. Finance people, taking care of good things, and the Admiral says you're making them rich, so we want you to do the same thing for our foundation, right? So, sound like our future plank on here, and we can talk about that. But for me this morning, Tom covered the things that what the NNOA is doing. But what we're simply going to continue to do is that you remember. If you don't remember me, you remember the three things, right? What is the three things that I want you to do? Say again? Why y'all whispering? Work, wealth, wisdom. Am I right, Admiral? Yes. Okay, so just keep that in mind every time you see me. If that's what we want you to do. Somebody asked a question. They said, hey, do you have an EIN number? We're a corporation. Of course we have one. Right? We established that back, I think, in January the 17th. So if you want to know what that is, see me. But yes, we do. So I'm prepared to take your money. I'm prepared for my treasurer to step in line. And as a small organization that plan on doing big things, I'm just going to try to help move this needle down the road and hopefully get everything done so we will look like any other foundation. Now, with that said, you had a few minutes to digest what we talked about this morning. If you're online, put it in the chat if you got any questions. But ask me, what's your question? How can I help you help us be better? See what I mean? Simple. I don't have no slides. And so we must have did a good job, and you did a good job at answering your own questions so far. Right? Admiral Hara, I did send you an email. So if you ask me for something, you're going to get it. You may not like it, but you're going to get the information, right? But look, we are on a great path, I think. I've been personally working on this for about a year. It's been going on in the organization for 3, 4, 20 years. But now we're at the point where we're going to put some meat on the bone. And we will not taking any money today, because I need my treasurer. Once I get my treasurer, you will be getting a phone call from some of us, right? And I hope that be able to give it any way you can give it any way you want to. PayPal, Cash App, Zelle, credit card, check, whatever you do, any form you think you want to give it to, we'll figure out how to make those avenues available to you. Probably a QR code, one of the things we're going to probably put out so that it'll make it easier for you. Try to meet people where they are, right? And
Bitcoin?
Oh, no, I'm not playing with Bitcoin. Right. That's a great question. Maybe somewhere in the future. I do own Bitcoin. I made 38% on it this year. But hey, that was just, that's me personally. That's not this organization. Next question. Tony Barnes.
I guess for me, the most efficient way is not, well, I'll rephrase that. You're going to get money from your membership and from your buddies. And, like you said, if you sell insurance, you're going to be a short career if you're only insuring your family and your friends.
Right.
So the majority of our money is likely to come from outside of the organization, in my opinion. And since we're all good soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, that we're going to solicit folks that we know that own businesses or we have personal contacts with that are entrepreneurs. And so I think that one of the first actions we take is to generate a press kit, for lack of a better term, so that we're all saying the same thing. Well, why do you want me to give you money? Well, because I do the following things with this organization, and you want to be a part of that. So until we generate that PowerPoint presentation, for lack of a better term, so that we're all speaking the same language off the same sheet of music, we have to prioritize that, in my opinion. I have a guy right now that I think I could go to, and you play golf with him too, who would be willing to give money, but he's not going to give you his money just for the sake of giving his money. He wants to know that his money is going to a cause that he supports and he's encouraged to do so. I mean, he supported our 50th anniversary golf tournament with a nice little check. And so we need to prioritize generating that talking point that we need.
I like the idea. We're taking on advisement, and I appreciate you volunteering to create that for us. Thank you. And your friend is also one of my fraternity brothers, so in another organization. So I'm good with that.
So let me follow in his draft. So his comments echo what Cynthia was trying to say, I think, this morning about what are you going to do with my money. So whatever we do, we have to make this clear line to the support of NNOA and what those specific activities are. Scholarships with the DC chapter, with STEM programs, you know,
Career development.
What we talked about today, the development of officers and making officers prepared to be successful, to grow to the highest positions in RC services. So I think we need just a little bit more layers down. And I'm not sure that's the kind of thing that has to wait till the full board is convened. But we have got to make this line clear. What are you doing with my money? I'm supporting NNOA. Well, what is NNOA doing with that money?
That's right.
And then that's the elevator speech and the talking points.
That's right. All right, so got two great answers there, and NNOA National President.
The good news is that we've been down this path before, and I want to thank Tom Abernathy in public, because 2.5 years ago, he developed the 5x8 card, or whatever you want to call it, but the foundation wasn't at a point yet where we could actually push that forward. I think now, especially with the detail you've already seen with the strategic planning and all the details you've heard from the foundation, now's the time for us to tweak that. So, Tony, you don't have to start from scratch. Tom already has that, and we can get that document to you. We can tailor it right there for our fit. And then you're right, we can get that out to everyone and say, hey, use these comments, and you can go forward.
Okay.
And we, after we have Tony work on it, after Tony work on it, we really do need to get a marketing agency to look at it, because this is serious business, and we need to invest in a marketing, a firm that takes what our vision and then polishes it up so that it resonates across different industries.
So it sounds like branding to me. That's what it is. It's the foundation branding. And 1 second. And now you're next. I'm fine with it, but all of these things take that thing called money. Okay? So I like ideas, but we're gonna have to put the value. What would it cost us to do it? And does it make sense at where we are at this point? And I'm sure that we'll find a way, but our branding is gonna be what's gonna lead us into the future. And I'm fine with it. And Tony, teasing with you, I'm fine with you looking at it and providing it to the board, because all these big minds gonna help me get it right. So yes, sir.
I'm just volunteering to tell my story. At any point when we get to this advertising and marketing, and we need to tell personal stories, I know I'm volunteering to tell my story on how this organization has truly impacted me and allowed me to be what some consider a successful career.
Absolutely.
I think nothing moves the needle, in my opinion, more than storytelling, and I'm volunteering to tell my story.
Right, and I think we talked about it a little this morning by what we do, having the STEM, the kid that had a chance to come to NNOA STEM, and we funded it. And what's their comments? And then go to an old guy, captain, and ask how well it's helped them throughout their career. But, as a small organization, a small part of the big Navy, right? Because no matter how many people in this room throughout, and we as black in the Navy was only 5.5% when I started 40 years ago. I don't think that's changed, right? So we're always going to be the icing on the cake. We're never going to be the cake, but we always push above our weight. And that's what our story is. And that's going to be part of the marketing. So I think just keep putting out the ideas and we will work it. But like I said, the first product is never going to be perfect because that's not why you hired me. You hired me, asked me to move this needle. And so I'm going to move the needle. And it'll probably be 85%, but next year it'll be 90. Eventually we'll get to 100. Okay. Yeah. Who's got a question?
Yeah, Tony, I just want to
Yes.
compliment because I know folks probably weren't on the discussion a week ago when you pointed out that you have been working with the Supply Corps Association and their foundation. Because the Supply Corps got a very active foundation. And the thing is, and I was pleased to hear that Tony and the team had actually outreaching to them where you could probably get the help for free, which you need to do, right? Because they will provide great ideas because they are a Navy organization. We got millions of dollars in the Supply Corps Foundation.
And also the Coast Guard Foundation, right, which used to be the chair of the Coast Guard Foundation, which will be one of our board of advisors as we move forward. Yes, ma'am.
Just one question, in the marketing, when we get our script to go out and solicit support, so will we formally present ourselves as the National Naval Officers Association?
Say that again?
What's the foundation?
I'm the foundation. The naval officer just
So,
okay. Just teaching.
Ms. Rowland.
Go ahead. Okay.
Okay, you're someone I know I can go and get some money from, right? So I want to tell you, one, that I need the money. Two, what is the return on your investment? So I'm presenting myself as the National Naval Officers Foundation.
Yes.
That's the appropriate title.
Yes, that's correct.
We
are 501c3, separate from the National Naval Office.
I understand.
Absolutely.
I understand the genesis for my question is because I know we aren't sanctioned by the Navy anymore. And so we say NNOA because that has its own
Right, I got it.
presence, so to speak. So that's all I wanted to get sure. The actual.
Yeah, I don't know what the Navy's gonna do about how the Navy deals with it, but that's not my task. If you call me, I'm gonna be the foundation, right? Right. The name of us is the National Naval Officers Foundation.
National Naval Officers Association
Right.
Foundation.
Association Foundation. Yeah, and we got an issue with apostrophe S and things like that, but that's the way.
I want to make sure we don't use sanction. The Navy did not sanction any affinity.
Right.
No one in DoD. What we had was a memorandum of agreement with the Navy. They have nothing to do with the existence of this association, and we should not use that kind of language. And I want to remind you folks, that MOU was only within our lifetime. This organization existed because that was under CNO Mullen. This organization existed for a good 30 years without an MOU with the sea services. So we're not in uncharted water, but we need to be careful about, I think, the language.
I need some English majors up here. Wait, one second.
Should the name be, we need to look at the name of the foundation?
Why? No.
Just make sure it's clear.
Right. I'm giving you our name, our legal name.
Which is, one more time.
National Naval Officers Association Foundation, and abbreviated NNOA Foundation. That's the way we have it. Right. Ma'am.
Okay, Tony, we're gonna change direction, back to the funding issue.
Okay.
You have zero funds right now.
No, we got 5,000.
You got 5,000.
I actually, there is some money that's been in the International Naval Officers Association has a few dollars.
Foundation.
Right. No, it's in the NNOA. They currently have it in their treasury. We need to establish a checking account to bring the money over into ours with the treasurer, and then we will start.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
That's not my
I stand corrected. We have $5,000. Okay. Maybe this discussion took place when I was outside, but $50, $100 donation, $1,000 donation, five $1,000 donations equal $5,000. So are you gonna?
Oh, are we? Okay.
Is that no silk cup?
I know we're not selling cupcakes,
Yes.
but are you turning down money if it's
No,
not $5,000?
no. Yeah, you I'm a Fishburne. You don't know me very well, then. Let me reintroduce myself, right? What we was talking about this morning was the concept of being a plank owner. To be on our website, that is the $5,000 we start with individuals, $10,000 for corporations, right? That's how you get on our website. We've had discussions, and my intentions is doing it similar to another organization I'm part of, is that you come your levels, $1,000 level, $2,500 level, $5,000 level, $10,000, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, up to $500,000 level of donors, right? So we're not turning out money. If you come in and give us $20 because that's what you have, then you gave us $20. You're a donor, right? But we want to get you to levels, and this group, right, and the people that you know, and the people they know, will help us, our organization, to build quickly because we have to be the seed money to go out and get that money from big corporations. If we're not contributing to ourselves, nobody is going to support us. So that discussion in our backdoor meetings, not in this room, right? Because you don't need to know all the sausage we're making, right? If you want the sausage, okay. Well, I will feed you as much as you want until you get tired of talking to me.
That JO needs to know that, hey, I can contribute $100.
Oh, absolutely.
I can be a donor.
Right. And like I said, we're not turning down donors. We're just not adding members, right? Because I told you we're a non-member organization, right? I hope that helped. Okay. Yeah, she's in 100,000. I appreciate it. Any more questions that I can kind of help?
All right, let's get Tony a hand.
All right.
This is a massive undertaking, and I am so happy that we were able to actually get this in front of everyone instead of just doing this from one Zoom meeting to another. But this is exactly what the organization needs. These are the questions that we need to answer. Since Willie volunteered to be the treasurer, and I know I saw you come back in. Thank you for that. We still need a few volunteers, but what we need to do before that is we need to clear this